All right. Well, again, we want to thank everybody for their time and attention today. The league is always far better when everybody's present and we get a chance to work through some things and have everybody's consent on that. I want to go to number 2, review and approval of minutes. Has anybody had a chance to review, and would they be willing to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. This is Julie Fulmer, that we approve those minutes.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second. John Pike.
Thanks, Sean. Oh, you have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Are there any opposed? Hearing none, we'll say that approved unanimously. Thank you very much. Up next, we have the conflict of interest disclosure. Does anybody have anything they want to mention or talk about before we get into the meat of the meeting? Seeing a lot of shaking heads and no voices speaking up. We'll go ahead and move on to the ULCT staffing update, general counsel and land use legal consultant. So Cam, it's yours.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor. When John Hiskey retired at the end of June, we wanted to take a moment to catch our breath and figure out what the medium and long-term issues were going to be before we hired his replacement. Everything through June was focused on the here and now, dealing with COVID, and to a degree still is. But we didn't have a good sense as of mid-June as to what the big issues would be in the fall and into the 2021 session. We have a better sense of that now, and there are going to be a lot of moving parts in the land use regulation arena. And so as a result, we're planning to move forward with a legal consultant to replace Hiskey, who has experience litigating land use issues, doing development agreements, and some of the intersection of the policy meets technical worlds. What we found over the last couple of months is that we've really missed Jody Burnett, who has been an active member of the Land Use Task Force and was an unofficial member of the League family. He retired from Snow Christensen Martineau, and many of your cities have contracted with Jody through the years. Because of his retirement, we feel like that's a gap that we need to fill. So we're going to be moving forward with that. So that's more for your information. The second piece, though, is related but also independent, and that's the role of the general counsel. Dave Church has been the general counsel for the League of Cities and Towns for almost as long as I have been alive. And Dave informed me a few weeks ago that he plans to slow down and get some of his life and schedule back, and that he's looking forward to that next step. And I told him I was supportive, even though you can't replace somebody like a Dave Church. He's irreplaceable and has made a tremendous contribution to the League of Cities and Towns and to local governments in general around the state. And Dave graciously agreed to stay on through September so we could finish this board cycle and get through the annual convention. So I wanted to make you aware of Dave's plans. Dave, is there anything that you'd like to say right now as part of this conversation?
No, other than I quit. I wasn't fired by him. I'm quitting.
So,
Mr. Yeah, I already tried that. But again, he has graciously agreed to stay on through September to give us some time to really think through what the role of the general counsel ought to be. The league constitution and bylaws are actually relatively quiet about the role of the general counsel. Dave, in his role, represents you as the board and provides legal counsel to the board. He also provides legal insight on policy issues when we as staff use him as a resource. And then he has been a tremendous asset for cities and towns around the state who have called him with questions. And so part of the reason I'm grateful that he's agreed to to quit in September rather than this moment, is it gives us time to think through what we want that role to be. Keep in mind too that our ongoing revenue for this budget year decreased and will decrease again because of the decision we made about the annual convention. So that will factor into the decision-making process around the future role of the general counsel. So one potential option would be to hire a land use legal consultant who could also play the role of general counsel. Another option is to keep them in two separate people, at least in the short term, while we think through strategically the role of the general counsel. And I'm reaching out to other state leagues around the country to see what they do with their general counsels. So more than anything right now, just wanted to make you aware that Dave will still be around for the next board meeting and an annual, but then he has deserved some well-earned time off and has made an incredibly valuable contribution to the league and local governments around the state. So Mayor Caldwell or President Mendenhall, turn back to you in case anybody has anything they want to add on this point.
Did hear the president was in, so I'm stepping out, and I'll probably turn off my video so I can eat lunch and listen to all the great advice being given.
Hey, I would just make a comment. Working with Dave in one way or another for the last about almost 13 years, I just want to thank you, Dave. And I'm not sure exactly how my council will take it. Yours is always their favorite session at any conference, and not just our council, but planning commission. You just do a great, and have always done a great job for the league and for cities collectively and individually. So plus you're just such a fun, great person to be around. So we will miss you. And I hope you'll stay close.
Thank you. I'm sure I will.
Mr. Chair, if I can, this is Jeff Silvestrine. David is a law school classmate of mine, and I think it's grossly unfair that you should be able to retire before me.
What you're doing, you did voluntarily.
Yeah, that's true.
You just dated yourself too, Mayor.
He was a very young, precocious law student.
Weren't we all?
Yeah, I'd just like to echo that. Thank you so much for everything you've done, David. You've always been so kind and welcoming, and your sense of humor is irreplaceable. You will be greatly, greatly missed.
Well, I hope so, but I doubt it. I think I'll be greatly, greatly forgotten. But
I don't think so.
You'll move on without me. And I'm willing to quit doing the work even sooner than the end of September if you want me to. That's the important thing to remember, is that I'm very replaceable, and once you make a decision on which way to go, you'll find that out in a hurry.
This is Dawn Ramsey. Dave, if I may, I echo what's been said. Thank you for everything that you've done.
Well, thank you very much.
But if you decide you're, ever looking for anything in your local community you'd like to do, I'm sure we could find something. So.
I'd be the worst volunteer ever.
Well, I'd be willing to take my chances. Thank you so much.
I'd just add too, Dave, thank you. A handful of us were on this board when we went through a really significant change a handful of years ago, and your advice and consistency through that really did help and made everybody feel really comfortable in what was a really tough thing to work through. So thank you, and appreciate everything you've done for the league.
Thanks.
Dave, I'll just add to it as well. Thanks for everything. To make the law interesting is some kind of talent, and what people said about the conferences and your sessions will go down as legend for sure. And I sure appreciated the both aspects of it. Sitting in some of those first conferences as a younger elected official and listening to you, I thought, what have I got myself into? And then by the end of your presentation, it was, oh, I can do this. I can do this with everyone else and everyone else's help. So thank you, Dave. Truly will be something not just for our organization, but for the state as a whole to not have you around as consistently as we have. So thank you so much.
I felt that way too. Just kind of what you said, kind of being introduced into everything. And I feel like I've had this wonderful entrance with working with you, David, and kind of learning from you and growing and I don't know, just with the league and with our own city and discovering how to work with you. I'm not sure. I know you said you're replaceable, but you've just made kind of our city and this organization into so many great things, and you'll be greatly missed. So I just hope you let us celebrate you and do something to honor you.
Probably not, but thanks for the thought, Mayor.
It was hard for him. I mean, he played golf last year, a couple of years ago, and I saw his team win. It was hard for him to even accept acknowledgement that his team won, and that's golf, Dave.
Well, the thing that everybody remembers is I was paid to do it. I've been compensated, and not only in money, but it's been a pleasure working with local government officials. It hasn't been a sacrifice for me. I don't need to be lauded or honored for doing for working with the people that I've known and being paid for it. So I appreciate the opportunity. And let me just say, Mayor, one of the reasons why I'm giving it up is just what you referred to. Is not long ago at a last convention, I was walking along the hall going towards one of my trainings, and I heard a couple of council members say, one of them asked the other, "Are you going to David Church's presentation?" And the other one said, "No, I've heard it enough already." And that's when I realized that I've been around since '83 doing the same things. It's after a while, it's better that you get a new voice and new people and new energy. So.
Yeah, but you always updated your material, David, so thank you.
Well, it's getting, and I deal with a lot of old people, and we're not too smart. If you look at the national candidates for office, you realize in a hurry that you reach a point where someone ought to tell people, you're too old. And I don't want to be told. I'm just going to accept that I am.
Well, we could spend the rest of the meeting, Dave, talking about the stories and the impact you've made. So you again, your humility, your way of going about business has says something about you as well. But thank again, it doesn't suffice to say thank you for everything you've done, and we're going to miss you for sure.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Cam, if there hasn't been a couple other announcements really quick that of some personal matters, maybe of some board members and things, have any of those been brought up? Mayor Caldwell, maybe I missed those. So just as a board, the condolences belong to board member and council member Jewel Allen, who lost her mom this last week. And we sure are grateful for her service to this organization, and I'm sure if she's anything like Jewel, that the world has lost somebody pretty special. So our condolences go out to her.
Thank you.
There you are.
So much.
There you are, Jewel. Thank you. Thanks. Our thoughts and prayers are with you. Anything you would like to add there?
No, I just appreciate the thoughts and yeah, it's been a hard week, but we'll get through it.
Well, thank you. Reach out, let us know, your friends and colleagues with whatever you need. We're here to support you in that time. So let us know how we can help you.
Thank you.
Mayor Ramsey, you can see she's on this call as well. Mayor, we're passing on our best wishes to you and your husband, dealing with some complications in the hospital. We hope everything is well. And again, Mayor Ramsey, anything you'd like to say there, or anything we can help with as a board?
I'll just thank you. Boy, this is quite a year for everyone, isn't it? And life comes at you fast, and sometimes there's things you just cannot anticipate. But we are grateful. Not everyone's as lucky as we are. They told us we did get my husband to the hospital in time. They're going to be able to help him recover, and hopefully we can then get to the heart of what really caused this, but not everyone who is in the hospital with sepsis is so fortunate. And we're really grateful that in time they think they're going to be able to get them through everything. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for that update, and please reach out if there's anything we can help out with. So thank you for your service, and thoughts and prayers with you as well. We also have an announcement of one of the happy things of going along another year. Our mayor in Park City, Mayor Bierman, it's his birthday today. I haven't scrolled through every page here. I kind of hope Mayor Caldwell and Mayor Pike that he's not, but he is on this call. Mayor Bierman, why are you not riding a mountain bike somewhere up in a beautiful sunny day of Park City on your birthday? What are you doing here?
I got up early and got a good ride in already, Mike. So good to be with all of you.
Happy birthday. You can look at Mayor Bierman and say you just graduated high school a couple years ago, and now he's having a birthday, and he's just off and running. But thank you, Mayor, for all your good work with this organization, but also across the state of Utah, and especially Park City and the area up there. You're truly a great leader, and we appreciate you, and appreciate you being in a meeting on your birthday. So best of days to you.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, I think that covers the personal notes that I had down, unless anybody else has anything else to bring up in front of this body before we get on to the next agenda item. Those three to me point out, again, the important work we all do, but what rises to the top of all the work that you and your councils and city folk work into is the health and safety of your residents, and that is a finite thing, right? Our health and our safety. So thank you all again for all your good work to always have that rising to the top of your of helping your cities out, the health and safety of your constituents. Let's see. So number 4, that was that what we were to, Cameron?
Yep, we're now on to Love, Listen, Lead.
Okay, so item number 5, we had a great meeting. Some of you are in that meeting here that sit on that board, that committee that's been created to Love, Listen, and Lead, and we had that meeting just last week, the first meeting with kind of doing the listening portion of that meeting, chaired by myself and Chief Ross of Bountiful, and great involvement from a lot of different representatives from across the spectrum. Again, it only takes a few minutes to listen to people in their situation, their lens that they live life through, but also view life through. And I was affected just only after a few minutes of listening there in that meeting alone. So I'm excited for the meetings that are coming after it, and I think the good results that we'll have from it in the end. Cameron, do you want to go over some of the specifics that we discussed on Thursday and the next steps?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. The Love, Listen, Lead effort is multi-pronged based on the principles that you as a board adopted back in June. On Friday, we met with the 6 Democratic legislators who are people of color, 2 in the Senate, 4 in the House, and had a really enlightening conversation for almost an hour and a half about how they view the issues of community trust in police, and helped us understand from their perspective what they would like to accomplish and what they would like to achieve. In addition to that, when I say we, I should say Chief Ross and I have met with multiple organizations over the last few weeks as part of this listening outreach. I personally have attended the Martin Luther King Commission, the Multicultural Affairs Commission. Chief Ross and I both co-presented at the Martin Luther King Commission along with Kyrene Gibb, who I'll introduce in a moment. We've met with the ACLU, with the Libertas Institute, the Department of Public Safety, and actually this afternoon, we'll be in the Big Tent meeting hosted by the Department of Public Safety with other stakeholders, and we are trying to coordinate follow-up meetings with the NAACP, Black Lives Matter, and other organizations. Our approach has been deliberate thus far. Chief Ross and I, in all of these meetings, have told stakeholders our first step is to listen and gather information. We'll bring that back to the task force and to our membership, and at the right time, then we'll start deliberating on all the different policy ideas. But we wanted to make sure that we are listening in a meaningful way. We have both been in touch with the 2 members of legislative leadership that are spearheading the state's efforts, Senator Vickers and Representative Schultz. In fact, just this morning I was talking to Senator Vickers. They are very supportive of our Love, Listen, Lead effort. We have also been in touch with the entire congressional delegation about Love, Listen, Lead. In fact, Wayne Bradshaw and I had a conversation with former League President, turned member of Congress, John Curtis, where he was thrilled to hear the amount of local government participation. We have about 20 cities who are represented on the Love, Listen, Lead task force, and wanted to make sure that he got our feedback for any potential federal legislation. 2 bills were both considered. One passed the House and died in the Senate, and then the other was felt to be considered in the Senate. But we know that there will be major policy issues coming. Most public safety officers are our employees, which is why it's so critical that we are proactive and on the front lines to listen and then to determine a course of action based on the principles that you've adopted and that the Chiefs of Police Association have adopted. As part of that effort is the outreach to the general public, and that's what we've contracted with Y2 Analytics to do. So with that, Mr. President, I'd like to introduce Kyrene Gibb, who is a partner and vice president of research at Y2 Analytics, to go through a short exercise with you as board members, and she can explain the research work and hopefully get a little additional feedback from you as board members. Mr. President, since it looks like we were about 7 minutes behind, so my suggestion is that we let Y2, it's 12:27 now, so let Y2 go for 20 minutes to 12:47, and then we'll just adjust the agenda accordingly if that works for you.
That sounds great. Thanks for joining us. And yeah, Kyrene, if you're ready, take it away.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you all for having me. So I guess a brief review of where we are now in the research process, and then my primary objective today is to get some feedback from all of you board members, because I think listening from all angles on these issues is going to be particularly important as we're engaging the public and various stakeholders throughout our communities. So far, we have conducted one initial focus group with members of the Multicultural Affairs Commission and the Martin Luther King Jr. Commission to get some initial feedback about some of the topics that we're planning to really dive into with the public, their experiences with law enforcement, their perceptions of law enforcement relationships with their communities. And we're receiving a lot of enthusiasm about the project and a lot of really, I think, helpful, compelling information from community members. Our next steps and the piece of the puzzle that we are sort of in progress with at the moment is to recruit community members throughout the state who are people of color and members of racially and ethnically diverse communities to participate in some focus groups with us. These focus groups will be held virtually, so we can respect social distancing and public health requirements throughout the state. And that also allows us to engage with members of communities throughout the state rather than just a little bit more centrally located along the Wasatch Front or in one particular city. So I think we have a unique opportunity here. While there are certainly some challenges to conducting research during a pandemic, this does afford us some opportunities to hopefully engage with more people and gather some broader perspectives throughout the state of Utah. So that is sort of a work in progress. We're also conducting a literature review to make sure that we understand some of the research that has been done in other communities throughout the state, other municipalities who have attempted to address the inequity that they found in their public safety systems, and some of the ways that communities have related to law enforcement and started to overcome some of the challenges that they perceive. I think we all understand that we have some unique challenges and opportunities in our communities in Utah. And I want to start to understand now from your perspective some of the top priorities for this research, and maybe just get a little bit of a conversation rolling. I know we have limited time here, but I would love to hear from all of you. And I think Cameron sent out these questions in the agenda ahead of time. We just have a few brief questions that I'd like to use to start to get the ball rolling. And again, I recognize that we're under some time constraints, so feel free to send me an email after this meeting if we don't get a chance to talk through some of your perspectives. But I'd like to go through these questions one at a time, and feel free to just chime in if you have thoughts or input based on your experience in your community. So first question here that I have for you as a board is, what opportunities or challenges do you see in your community as it relates to equity, public safety, and community trust? And I know several of you, so if you don't chime in, I'm going to call on someone. So.
This is Jim Talbot, Farmington. I think our public trust and our community involvement with the police department has been really good. I think that we don't have a lot of officers, but they try very hard to make sure that they're fair when they are dealing with the community. I feel like we don't have that many struggles at this point in time. We have, but then again, we haven't been the target of some of these things to where we would have to really figure out where we are in being in an uncomfortable cycle. But I think it's important that we continue to do that. Our police department opens up to the public. They've inquired with high schools, junior highs, students around to come in and visit with them. We have programs where we go out in the community with them so that they can get to know our public servants, especially from the standpoint of police and fire.
That's really helpful. I think for some of our communities where we have, various sizes of police forces and community sizes, it is interesting to hear how some of these tensions play out or don't present themselves in your communities. So again, I want to emphasize that we're looking at opportunities or challenges that you're facing. If you feel that your community is doing a good job with this, and maybe this isn't something that you've seen manifest itself, if you feel that that community trust is really there, and when we go out to the public that is reinforced, I think that's an opportunity for us to continue to build that community trust throughout the state. So I want to make sure that our research questions aren't coming across as an indictment. We're really just looking to gather public opinion. So thank you, Mayor Talbot.
This is Mayor Arvey. I think in that vein, one of the issues that we're dealing with is that it's just getting harder and harder to find officers because of the public opinion that's out there. Basically, the accusation that all police officers are brutal and racist. And it's damaging to morale, and it's damaging to our ability to find good quality people. And so if you're talking about challenges, finding quality officers is a big challenge for us right now. And I think just the flip side of all of this that's going on, there is an adverse effect on the morale of our police departments when these implicit accusations are made.
Hi. This is Jewel Allen from Grant City. So we are a city about 45 minutes away from Salt Lake City. So we have opportunities along the Wasatch Front.
Get off my call.
We have opportunities along the Wasatch Front, but we're still a fairly rural community. I mean, relatively speaking, we have a population of 11,000. We don't get, at least it's not very obvious if we have any real issues here as far as, I mean, we don't get the same kind of negative feedback towards police officers. I think generally speaking, our community is supportive of them. In fact, they chronicled how the police department was inundated with well wishes and positive messages, and they share that on Facebook, and that's great to see. I think one thing that has been an interesting impact on us from some of the protests that have been happening in Salt Lake City is some of our officers have participated as backup or support, and which, you know, it's great to see the solidarity with the police officers. But I think as a city, it made us think, you know, what exactly is our role as backup, and what kind of protections should we maybe have in place, just so that the expectations are clear, you know, how much, you know, like, and said, your police officer was in Salt Lake City, and so thus, therefore, they were implicit in or complicit in this one particular action, and they were not part of that. But I'm just saying, I guess that's one thing that we hadn't thought about as a city. We certainly don't want to discourage our police officers to help and support other you know, other cities, but it's just something that we had to think about, and yeah, as part of a discussion there. So
That's really insightful as well. I think as we're thinking about the league as an organization that can help to, you know, be at the forefront of changes throughout the state, or help enforce or help support our law enforcement community, and what does that look like as there are different tensions in different communities that may not be affecting all of our communities the same way. So that is a really insightful point. Thank you, Jewel.
This is Erin Mendenhall, if I could jump in. I think that one of our biggest challenges across the board outside of Salt Lake City as well is this narrative, this idea that it is either police are corrupt and racist and the whole system's broken, or it's not. And I'll just mention that, you know, Salt Lake City is fine being the grounds for protest for the state of Utah, and we welcome that in our front yard, so to speak, people to come out and have their voices heard. But I think that this perpetuation of that there's this dichotomy of options is exactly the problem that we've had for 400 years in this country. And that what I would love to see cities do is open this space in between, where I think the majority, and I don't just think, local research and national research is showing that the majority of Americans want some kind of reform and believe some kind of reform is appropriate. And we recognize implicit bias as human beings. That we need to create this space of conversation where I believe is what the bell curve of the population sees, which is a discomfort in engaging with this, you know, sort of extreme positions, a recognition of our ability to positively affect change in our neighborhoods and in our communities, but not knowing how to even approach it if you aren't already protesting on the street, or, you know, a police officer or a family of a police officer. I think people don't know how to get into this and get into the conversation. And when we can't speak openly and honestly about the realities of injustice that exist in every city, to whatever degree they do, because they do, then we're perpetuating these systems of inequity. So just that recognition that we have space to improve. Like, that's why every one of us ran for office, because we said we can do something good for the community here. There's something we can improve. But, you know, destigmatizing this racial conversation so that the majority of people can begin to access it is the work in front of us. And I think we're all grappling with how do we do that?
I think that's very well said. The need for the ability to have a conversation that doesn't deal in extremes, that doesn't say that there is this dichotomy where either everyone is entirely corrupt or everyone is perfect and there is no problem. I think making sure that we acknowledge and provide a space for nuance is going to be incredibly important if we want to make changes and address the problems that we have in varying degrees throughout our communities in the state. Thank you. Mayor Kafusi, I saw that you had raised your hand.
Yeah, thank you. Just wanted to speak a little bit to this because we've been hit pretty hard as well with all of this that's going on. We had the shooting in Provo and continue to have protests. Something that comes to my mind, and we're working on this every day, nobody hates a bad cop worse than a good cop, right? I mean, my chief and my officers just felt like they've just lost 10 years of progress with what's happened in trust and faith and community relationships. It's going to take some time to build that trust back because it's not where it used to be. Another thought that comes to my mind is policing to your community. There's always room for improvement, and every community is different. We have 125,000, and we're not Salt Lake, but we're also not Goshen. And so I talk to my chief every day about policing to our community and the needs of our community, and it's different. It looks different than what other mayors' communities might look like. Something we put into play that, because I believe in action always, I hate to be reactive. We've already gone out into the community. My chief has held multiple meetings. We're listening. We're listening to learn is what we're doing right now. We're also looking at a new type of, we're deciding really what to call it. But for me, the thought that keeps coming to mind is government for all, some type of an ongoing initiative that's government for all, that is the umbrella that talks about, will bring into context our police needs and changes. We are already scheduled for bias training in our police department, and I'm trying to figure out a way to get that funded for every single full-time employee in the city. There's some, due to the feedback I'm getting from the groups I'm meeting with, these are some of their suggestions. And I mean, it's a lot of suggestions for those of you that have been meeting, but every suggestion costs. And I remind them of that every suggestion they're giving me as the mayor comes with a dollar value to it. And so to kind of weed through this has not been easy, but a couple that I feel really strongly about are the bias training, and a couple others we're working on. So just my feedback would be, yes, I agree with the other mayors. There's always room for improvement, always, always. And again, we have to police to our community, which is unique to us. And that's kind of some of the thoughts I have in my mind as the mayor of Provo. And again, we've had protests every weekend. They're ongoing.
Thank you, Mayor. I think one of the things that we heard in our initial focus groups was actually the importance and the value of policing to communities in particular, and law enforcement and public safety that is adapted to their individual communities. In order for that to be possible, our officers and our police forces have to know their communities. So I think that's one of the things, and one of the areas where, of course, there's a dollar value attached to everything. I think you're absolutely right that there are a lot of suggestions and comments to weed through. But as we're thinking about changes that may be effective and things that we can do to improve the equity and the equitable treatment of community members throughout the state, making sure that we're looking at solutions at the community level, I think is going to be key. I saw Mayor Silvestrini and another, and I missed the name. So I'm going to go to Mayor Silvestrini first, and then we'll jump back.
Okay, so I just
And
want to say,
Mayor, really quick, let me just jump in and say Kyrie's got till 12:55, so we're going to give her a little bit more time. Thank you for the discussion, and yeah, go ahead, Mayor. Sorry.
yeah, I'll be quick, but I appreciate that some of the remarks were made early in this conversation about how difficult this is for our police officers to be examined under a microscope like this, and you can't help but feel defensive about it. But the other thing that I think is really positive that's coming out of this is community conversations where our residents are learning what kind of training our officers actually get. And we're talking about what kind of training they should have and beefing that up. And the conversation is also trending some of the suggestions, pointing out things that are really deficiencies in how we function as a society. Some of the conversation about focusing more effort on mental health response or social work response. And I don't know that the answer to that is you don't send a mental health worker instead of a cop if there's an armed crazy person, right? Sorry, pardon my French there, but the point is that our police departments lack a lot of these resources, and I think that it's great that we're having this conversation where we maybe actually do a better job of policing and address some of the other issues that we have, like homelessness and addiction and things like that, with some other tools, because we've been working at some of these problems for a really long time and really not making a very good dent in progress. So I'm excited by the fact that even though this is coming at a price and it's painful for government officials to sit there and be yelled at. It's painful for our cops to be yelled at. But we're having this conversation, and we're actually, I think, teaching some members of our community that, hey, our cops are not as Stone Age as you might think. They actually are doing implicit bias training already. We are trying. These are, but the conversation, my point is the conversation is actually a really healthy thing for all of us. It's healthy for our cops. It's healthy for our elected officials, and it's healthy for our communities to get to know their police better.
That's helpful. Thank you. And then we have, Mayor Bierman, go ahead.
Thank you. Well, Park City's been working on our equity work for a couple of years now, so I was glad we had some capacity when this latest set of social unrest hit. And what a number of you have mentioned the need to have these conversations, and I don't know if you've had the same challenge as I have, but despite the fact this is something our community has been very outspoken about wanting to talk about, it also creates an amazing amount of discomfort. I have started to try to talk about racism just directly, that it exists in our community and systemic racism, and boy, that a lot of people just want to shut the conversation down there. And I think we need to find ways to come up with languages that we can have these conversations and keep everybody at the table, because I've been disappointed how it quickly, when you start to talk about racism in your community or biases, it immediately goes partisan and people just shut down. But an interesting thing, Mayor Kafusi brought up the concept of government for all. And I think that's one of the ways that we talk about how to build trust in both government and our police departments, and that is figuring out how to get better diversity on our boards, our commissions, our councils, and on our, in our organizations, including our police. We find that incredibly hard. Over 25% of our population in Park City is Latinx, and we're always struggling to find police officers that are either of Latinx descent or are Spanish speaking. And if we could figure out a way statewide to really promote diversity throughout all of our systems, it'd go a long way, I think, towards building trust and engagement.
I think there's a lot to be said for descriptive representation, for feeling that your leaders, your public safety officers look like you and can relate to you. That's something that we've heard in our initial discussions as well. So that's helpful as well also. Any other thoughts? I want to be respectful of our time. We have about 5 more minutes. Go ahead, Emily.
Mayor Niehaus. I completely echo what Andy just said. And I just want to add one little thing that I have been listening really, really hard to the use of pronouns. So when we're talking about, any particular minority population, we still use as like councils or, just this them and they. And it just really shows that we still have a long way to go in terms of diversity and inclusion. And I think it's also important to recognize that, so down here in Moab, we have a Native American population that is very much underrepresented. And it was only 150 years ago that, this group of people faced genocide. And we don't really talk about the history, so between genocide and slavery in a very, very recent history in our country, that has set the stage for what we're trying to solve for today. And so we're still not we're not digging deeper into those historical contextual conversations. And I think that's why people are protesting as well, because they would like to be heard and they would like to have that conversation.
I think that is one thing that we're hearing already, I think, in our very preliminary discussions with the Martin Luther King Jr. Commission, with the Multicultural Affairs Commission. There is a definite need and a clear and present need for community members who have been historically underrepresented to be heard. And so that's one of our goals. And I think probably the biggest hurdle we're going to face with this project is ensuring that we're representing those voices that have been marginalized, who are less likely to be registered to vote, or who are not eligible to register to vote. Many of the diverse members of Utah communities are refugee families who don't have citizenship, are here as migrant workers, and we have to find ways to reach out to those populations, ensure that we have their trust and that they feel safe communicating with us, and that they'll be candid with us. So that's one of the areas where we're going to be really relying on our community partners to help us find avenues to make inroads, to contact members of these communities that we're just not used to hearing from because of some of these biases in our institutions. I think we have time for one last comment, and then I'll just ask that any additional thoughts that you have, please feel free to reach out to me. We've only scratched the surface of the first of the 4 questions that I had sort of put out there to get the ball rolling with these conversations, but I'm eager to hear from all of you as we're designing the research and moving forward with these objectives. If we don't have any additional input, Cam, I'll turn the time back to you.
Thank you, Kyrene, and thanks to your team for the outreach. And just to make sure everybody's clear on what the next steps are, Kyrene mentioned one focus group that has already taken place. She'll have a second focus group that will be with police officers. And I think this speaks directly to the point that Mayor Harvey and Mayor Silvestrini and others have raised, which is we need to make sure we're listening to all members of the community, which include those officers that right now are in the crosshairs. And there are a lot of things they're being criticized for that are really outside of their control. And that's one thing that we've heard loud and clear in our conversations with the police chiefs. In fact, in our first Love, Listen, Lead meeting, we have 22 members from almost 20 cities, whether that was Mayor Shepard from Clearfield, whether that was Chief Carr from South Jordan, Councilmember Larkin from St. George. When we were asking the question of what's the problem we're trying to solve here, everybody had a slightly different perspective of what that problem was, and everyone was concerned about supporting their public safety officers. One thing I should note from the second Love, Listen, Lead meeting this past Friday is that the 6 Democratic legislators who have been on the front lines of this overall issue on community trust and law enforcement and equity, they made it very clear that they did not support the concept of defund the police, but that they instead were very supportive of finding ways to support law enforcement officers as well as support areas of improvement, which is almost word for word what Bountiful Police Chief Tom Ross and I have been saying in all of our meetings, is that we support our officers and we support areas where we can find common ground for improvement. Gary Hill, your police chief, is a phenomenal individual and is really the right person at the right time. So thank you, and thank you to the elected officials in Bountiful for allowing Chief Ross the flexibility to be the UCOPA president again for the next few months as we have some of these uncomfortable conversations. It's important to note that there are already more than 20 bill files open at the State House. The Congress has a couple of bill files open that they plan to return to at some point. And so there are a lot of moving pieces, and we are trying to focus on what we can control and finding that space where we support our officers and recognize potential areas of improvement. The time will come where we will pivot from listening to deliberation. There are going to be bills that we will absolutely have to oppose. There are going to be bills that we can consider that could be good ideas that are worth potential passage. We're not quite at that step yet because, again, we've been trying to listen and make sure we understand the problems from different stakeholders so that we can talk about how to improve the community trust in public safety. So that, Kyrene, I know you've got to drop off. Any final comments from you?
I don't think so. I really appreciate the board's input here, and we're excited to be partnering on this important work and moving forward. I think the public dialogue has to be one important step as we're looking to implement change that fits all of our communities and addresses the challenges that we face. So I wish all of you the best as you're making these decisions, and hopefully we can provide some information that helps to inform those decisions from the public's perspective.
Cameron?
Yes, sir.
Just as you mentioned, or Kyrene did up front, I've got some responses that I'd like to send by email. Can we still do that through the end of today or something? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yes,
yeah, but
please.
it doesn't need to be by the end of the day, right, Kyrene?
No, certainly not. By all means, please feel free to email me, Kyrene, Kyrene, @Y2Analytics. Go ahead and send your responses to those questions, and I'm happy to continue to engage as we're going through this process. So we'll update you every step of the way as we progress in this research.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mayor Pike, the statewide survey won't go until September. So we're working through focus groups now, and then we'll get to that statewide survey. So you can email to me and I'll forward it to Kyrene, and then I'll send out Kyrene's email address and you can send it to her directly. So the more feedback from as many voices as possible, the better the whole project will turn out.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Kyrene. Thanks for everybody participating in that. Again, I don't want it to sound somewhat trite to say it this way, but think of the most uncomfortable conversations you sometimes have as a council in your cities. And for me in Spanish Fork and the growth factor, it's usually around land use, right? And people have one view of this is the way it is, this is the way it should be, and people have a different view. And I know it's comparing apples to oranges a little bit here, but in that vein, I think those uncomfortable conversations that we're going to have in our communities about this, people trust you to land in common sense, and I like the word nuance that was used here, and so they trust you to communicate that better than anyone else, and you do that so well across all your cities. So I'm confident that this initiative of Love, Listen, and Lead will do that, and you're the best people in your communities to deliver on those common sense solutions. So thank you for everyone's input, and thanks for stepping up and doing the hard work. Okay, Cameron, anything else on that, or should we move to item number 6?
I'm good with number 6, unless there are any follow-up questions for me about the effort.
I don't see any. Let's go to item number 6, COVID-19 and league update and the annual convention.
Mr. President,
perfect.
Can I chime in for a moment? Cameron and team,
yes.
I just want to thank you for bringing Y2 in and all of the work that you're doing with this Love, Listen, Lead. It's exceptional. I think it's some of the best in the nation from what I see with U.S. Conference of Mayors and National League of Cities. So I'm really grateful for this work that you're doing and helping us navigate this.
Thank you, Mayor. A lot of the credit does go to Chief Ross, the president of the Chiefs of Police Association. So I'm very fortunate to be tag teaming this effort with him and with your support as the board and with the Chiefs of Police support of their board as well.
Anything else on Love, Listen, and Lead, or should we talk about something else happening in our state, nation, and the world, COVID-19?
Okay, well, in that case, let's pivot. In an ideal world, we could have spent the whole 2 hours just having that conversation on public safety, but we do have a bunch of bills coming our way this week in special session. Some are related to COVID and the CARES Act allocation. We'll also have an update on the potential fourth stimulus. Let me first, though, just reference the annual convention. You were the first to hear the official announcement last Thursday before we notified sponsors as well as the general membership. And I know many are disappointed that we are unable to meet in person, but as we reviewed the feedback from the membership, from you as a board, from sponsors, the responses were basically evenly split over whether or not people would even attend anything in person. It was cost prohibitive to go to other locations around the state, and with Salt Lake City still being in orange and Salt Lake City School District still being in virtual classes for the first quarter, and even many churches are still not meeting in person in Salt Lake City, even though they're starting to meet in person around the state. We felt like this was really the only option we could do. That being said, we're committed to make it as interactive as possible, recognizing Mayor Arvey had a great line in his email back to me that he's been Zoom called to death over the last few months, and Mayor, amen. I think we all feel that way. And so we've been looking at a variety of roundtable and networking type opportunities where we can try to get smaller groups together where you can just socialize with each other or have facilitated conversations with each other. It will never replace the in-person networking that comes, but hopefully we can still provide some valuable training, valuable networking, and some important general sessions. One important general session is that right now we have one of only 2 scheduled gubernatorial debates in the fall. There's one from the Utah Debate Commission and ours. And I've been in communication with both campaigns, and both candidates were actually uncomfortable doing a live debate in front of a large audience. So that was another factor that we considered. What happened during the spring is we had multiple Republican debates. In fact, America Fusi would know this better than me, but there were multiple debates where there were a handful of staffers or VIPs who were in the room. The Salt Lake Chamber, for example, had their board of directors in the ballroom during the gubernatorial debate with masks and social distancing and the like, and the campaigns are comfortable with that approach. So at least for board members, if you were interested, you could be in the room for the debate, and we will webcast the debate to the membership. We also intend and want to just make sure there are no board members who are concerned about this approach, but we intend to webcast the debate to league members only, those who register for the conference, just like you would get that in person. And then historically, at least in the last 2 gubernatorial debates during the annual convention, we've then released the debate on YouTube at some point after the fact. So we would follow that same model, even though most of our members would watch it virtually, but then it would still get out to the general public. And the targeted time is 9 a.m. on that Friday morning, September 25th, for the gubernatorial debate, and we're working on the rest of the schedule for that week for the other virtual events. There will be in-person mobile tours around the state, so that way people could still gather regionally if they see fit to do some mobile tours, but there would not be any in-person programming at the South House. President Mendenhall, is there anything that any members of the board, any questions anybody has about the approach on the annual convention?
Yeah, so any insights, complaints, or anything that anybody has according to the how the annual convention is scheduled to go?
Mr. President, and Cameron, I just think it's the right approach. I think it's the right way to do it, and we'll be glad we did it this way. It's tough, miss out on the networking largely, but I think it's the right thing, especially how it looks. And we have events canceled. And as you said in your email, I think, Cameron, this would be the first convention, at least on this scale, in the Salt Lake area in Utah, I think. I don't think it's time to be doing that. So I like the approach.
I'll just say I applaud the approach as well. I am disappointed that Mike Mendenhall won't be giving a keynote like President Pike did back in the day. It is what it is. But I agree. And I think as public officials, it's an irresponsible thing for us to lead out on the first public gatherings. I think we need to be very careful about that. And with school just coming back online, we don't know what's going to happen. And I think it's the most responsible approach to this. So thank you for your time and consideration. I know you guys have been wringing your hands over this and looking at all options for a long time, just like we all have for public events in our community. And I applaud your safe and careful approach.
Thank you. So
I could only imagine, Mayor Caldwell, of how good that was going to be. But at some level, you will get a taste of it, something, recorded and edited and, maybe glossed over my face or something.
That's
but
why I'm disappointed.
In person.
It would have undoubtedly have been amazing.
Well, and Mike, I hope you give us a discount for, not doing it in person, because we pay big bucks to hear you in person. But
Nope. You're paying, and there's no refunds when that happens. Sorry about that. Apologize.
Hey, I would just like to chime in and thank the board and you, Cameron, for following through that way. We've tried so hard to make sure that we keep our cities safe. We have articles that come out about wearing masks that some people believe in, some people don't. And I think for the Utah League of Cities and Towns to hold back at this point in time is probably the right decision. So I concur with that.
I just want to say, as a parent, I'm exhausted, so I appreciate not having to drive so much. But also, I sure would love a break from being a mom. No, but I do also, I do want to ask, are we going to schedule in any social time where we don't have agenda, but we do have just like come together and chat, virtual chat?
Yeah, that's the idea of the roundtable concepts, is trying to provide some of those social opportunities as much as you can via Zoom. So Katie Harley on our staff has been looking at which social hour concepts have worked and which ones haven't, and how we can try to incorporate those.
Well, I would love to just put in a request for a Women in Leadership social hour to be at around 4:30. Possible. We could do that.
Well, yeah, Mayor Kafusi and I met actually about the Women Local Government Caucus a few months back. And, that's one thing I do regret about not having the in-person conferences, is we had some big plans for those next steps. But certainly we had on our short list women in local government having the networking opportunity during the conference. So we will take the 4:30 recommendation under advisement. I've been on a couple of calls with NLC where they're at 4:30 Eastern time. And so they are, they start their happy hour, and some of us are still in the middle of the afternoon. But I usually take my water anyway. Okay, well, speaking of COVID, a couple other important items. Number one, Wayne, let me do just the quick federal update, and then you and I can do the CARES Act allocation update and Representative Kwan's proposal, which we need a vote on. Even though it says action for information and discussion, in item number 9, Mr. President, says action position on special session bills. So we can take the position on Representative Kwan's proposal during number 9, but we'll bring it up here as part of the CARES Act allocation discussion. There is no new news to report from DC other than Congress just can't get along. The House Democrats, the Senate Republicans, and the White House are still far apart, but at least as of 3 hours ago, the last time I checked. They are scheduled to be in recess through September with the possibility of coming into session if they get to consensus. What that means on the ground for us is this: we still have the CARES Act, of which 1/3 has been distributed, and Wayne will talk about the second third in a moment. The Senate Republican bill would provide more flexibility in the CARES Act, but no new money. House Democrats want new money for local government, and it is one of the biggest sticking points in the negotiations right now. We've talked to all of our delegation, and our delegation is supportive of the flexibility piece. On the new money piece, it's a little more up in the air because the House Democrats' proposal is such a large amount of money that it's hard for the Republican members of our delegation to take that seriously until that number comes down. And again, those negotiations just haven't gotten anywhere yet between the House and the Senate. So at least as of now, we have to operate under the premise that the only relief money that we have is the CARES Act. So Wayne, can you give a quick update on the distribution of the first tranche and where the conversation is on the second tranche, and then we'll add the Representative Kwan proposal.
Yep. So for cities and towns and counties outside of Salt Lake and Utah County, the first tranche has been available since June. And this week, everyone that has received the first tranche will be getting an email from the Governor's Office of Budget Management and Budget stating that the second tranche is available. It will come with a kind of a short survey asking whether you want the second tranche. And then kind of, even though your reporting is about what you've spent, they would like a sense of what you plan on spending the rest of the money on. And that will, so your city should be seeing that email this week. And then, as we've always discussed, the third tranche will be in the early fall, or late fall, early winter, and could change and not be population based as the first and second tranche are currently. It could take in additional data points that we receive through your reporting. One note is that 100 cities or towns have not applied for their first tranche of CARES dollars. And so we have sent a short survey to all of them asking why they have not, if they need more information. So we're still working through that process. For Salt Lake County, we've been informed that they will follow the state's lead. And so if the state does a second tranche based on population, Salt Lake County will do a second tranche based on population. And then those in Utah County, they have sent all of the money out to their cities and towns that are going to be allocated. Happy to answer any questions about that before we go into Representative Kwan's proposal.
Wayne, the one thing that I want to add is we're concerned about the legislature and other parties using the fact that 100 cities and towns have not applied for CARES Act dollars against us for the second and third tranches. So that's why we're doing a lot of follow-up this week. Most of them are small, but there are some cities in Davis and Salt Lake and Utah counties that have not yet applied for this money, including several board member cities, at least according to the governor's office. So Wayne's been doing a lot of that follow-up, and then municipal clerks are helping us follow up with the smaller communities too.
And while the survey went out on Friday, the early results are showing that about 50% of the respondents of the small towns were unaware that they could apply for funding and will be applying immediately. About a quarter of them stated they are going through their internal process before they can apply. And then the final quarter state that they're aware the money is there, but they do not plan on applying just because they don't feel like they have any expenses that fall under Treasury guidance. Okay, and perfect. Thanks, Nick. So the league has been approached by Representative Kwan. She would like to set up a state grant program for first responders, kind of a mental health support program for first responders. And how it would be funded is for every sworn officer, corrections officer, public dispatcher that your city has if you're outside of Salt Lake and Utah County, they would pull $61.76 from your allocation. And that would go to the health department to set up a grant program. The state would also put in $61.76 per officer or corrections officer that they have, and pull it from their share of CARES dollars, and then invite Utah and Salt Lake County cities and towns to send an allocation to the Department of Health. But it would be optional for municipalities in those two counties. So the Representative Kwan has asked for our position on her proposal. Some of the pros is that the state would be assuming the risk. It would be their grant program. If the Treasury comes back in a later audit and says those dollars were not appropriated correctly, it would be the state that would have to pay those dollars back. Some of our concerns is that we have communicated to cities and towns that the first and second tranche would be based on population, and that would change those allocations and how you planned and budgeted for them. And so Representative Kwan is going to present this idea to the House members and to executive appropriations and have those conversations. And we would like feedback from the board on whether we can be supportive of this concept or raise any concerns with her. One of the real challenges I think come with this is that we have until December 30th to spend those dollars, and they have to be directly correlated to the public health crisis. And so this will take time for the Department of Health to establish the grant program, for your communities to apply for these dollars, and then to report back to make sure that any public safety or first responder that utilize this service, there is a direct correlation to the public health crisis. So it couldn't be related to something else that they've experienced on the job. So happy to answer any questions and take feedback from the board.
Hey Wayne, this is Marsha White. Is that an annual amount, or sorry, I missed that. Is it monthly? I didn't hear that. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. It would just be a one-time pull from your allocation of CARES dollars now. So right now, if we just did population-based, every one of your residents would be $87.50 is what your city would receive. What the state is saying is we would subtract $61.76 per public safety officer you have in your community. So everyone's bill would be different, but that's where they would fund this one-time grant program through the Department of Health, that the dollars again have to be spent, allocated, and done with by December 30th as it currently stands for CARES Act guidance and rules. Mayor Niehaus?
I don't love it just being small and remote and having spent, a lot of dollars on mitigation, especially being a tourism-based community. So I think that I'm going to be a minority voice, and maybe I'm not weighing all of the benefits of the state having more control over that money. I have been very appreciative of GoEd and GoEd dollars that have flowed to Moab. And I suspect that might have been more than what would have come here anyway. So maybe it's a knee-jerk reaction, like a little person syndrome or something. I don't know. Just my immediate 2 cents on that.
And I will state that in our negotiations before the Treasury guidance came out, the state had contemplated sending dollars to local governments and telling them or indicating how they would like those dollars to be spent. And in one of the versions of the Treasury guidance, it's very clear that if you sub-grant these dollars to a local government, the state cannot add any additional requirements on how you spend those dollars other than the only requirements they can have is to make sure that you comply with the reporting and Treasury guidance. So this is why the state can't come in and say Moab or Ogden or Salt Lake City will spend the dollars on public safety, because the Treasury guidance prohibits them from doing that. So that's why the state would have to keep the dollars themselves and create the program themselves, because they're unable to dictate to you as a city directly.
I have some concerns about this. It seems like it's overly complicated for a very short period of time, and I don't think the need for this is going to be similar across all cities. And it seems like something that we could perhaps take on our own as local cities versus applying it universally across the entire state and be more efficient and effective in doing so.
Yeah, that was going to be my comment too, is if it's an eligible expense, we can do it ourselves. And the likelihood is that our chiefs and our cities are going to know best who needs that resource better than the state would anyway.
Right.
So.
Great feedback.
Anyone else have any other feedback for Wayne on this?
Mr. President, can I add one last piece?
Yes.
So, Representative, so one potential option for the board to take position is to say that we don't want any sort of changes on that second tranche, which the legislature will be authorizing this week. And then say that later this year, when we're going to be looking at the third tranche anyway for potential hotspots or other data points, that we could say to Representative Kwan, we're willing to have this be one of the conversations at that point. So it's a no this week, but when we reset everything for that third tranche, we're willing to have that conversation. So that's a way maybe to still express the concerns today, but keep that door open down the road. If the board feels like we just don't want the state to withhold this money at any point, and we know for sure we don't want them to withhold the money at any point for this program, then we can tell her that today. She presented to the Loveless and Lead Task Force on Friday, and this was the key point of her presentation, and then we got the language that Executive Probst is considering. We got it this morning.
Cam, I would support what you just indicated to us. I like the fact that we keep the second tranche how it is and maybe look at it down the road.
Motion by Mayor Talbot, second by Mayor Niehaus in Moab for that language. All in favor, say aye.
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 Perfect. Thank you, Wayne, for your work on that. And
thank you.
And let's the next item on the agenda is the check registers, but we're going to skip really quick because we have Mayor Caldwell that we're going to lose to another meeting real quick. We're going to skip to number 9. Is that okay, Cameron, to skip to 9 and bring that up real quick? Engagement and outreach updates. Victoria and Cameron. Cameron, you want to start us out on this?
Perfect. We have, at this point, we're expecting more than 20 issues on the special session this week. Not all of which are related to COVID, but several of which are related to cities. So Victoria, Mayor Caldwell has to leave in a few minutes, and obviously the West Weaver thing is in his backyard. So let's start with that issue, and then we can work backward on tiers and the other pieces. Does that work?
Yep, that works. Good afternoon, board. It's good to see all of you. As Cam said, we've got a whole bunch of issues that we're hearing will be in the special session, but there is no call yet. The legislature, it's not even clear if the legislature is calling themselves in or if the governor is calling themselves in. So all of this is based on fallout from the previous special sessions and general session and then the rumor mill. Nick, if you'd advance to the next slide and we can come back to the tiers after that. Thank you. The biggest issues that we're hearing that would impact, now keep in mind that we are told over and over that these special sessions are to address COVID because it's the true emergency. None of what I'm about to talk to you about has anything to do with COVID. We're seeing annexation and incorporation and referendums popping up. So the first issue, probably most of you have heard about either in the news or because of impacts it's had in your local community is HB 359 for substitute. The original bill was passed in the second to last night of the session rather quickly, and then it was amended again in the subsequent special session. This is the bill that allows a municipality to annex property in a county other than the county it's located in, so a cross-county boundary annexation. And then the amendment that happened by Senator McKay's bill in the subsequent special session allowed that type of annexation to create an island or peninsula. So this is the hideout issue. The ULCT supported the original bill as in session. The original bill was a consensus bill, and then the substitute was created and introduced in the very wee late hours of the session. We gave our initial support to it because it does allow cities flexibility to annex without being confined by the county in which they're located. However, at that time, we didn't have all of the details, and we also were unaware that the Association of Counties did not have full understanding of this bill. So since then, we have sent a letter supporting a repeal of HB 359 and pointing out the problems that we have it, and that we want the counties to have, just like we would, to be able to have some local say into annexations that come into their boundaries. Hideout, according to the news pieces I read, has put a pause on this process. We have heard that there will be a repeal of this bill, but there is no bill actually before us right now to see what that repeal would actually do. So right now our stance on it is to repeal the bill, but we need to see the language. Cam, I don't know if you have anything else you want to say about that.
No, that covers it. And I think and part of the language in there we're hearing will be about West Weber. And I did get it from a very high-ranking source as of 10 a.m. this morning that the legislature will repeal. It's just a matter of what it actually says. And then this West Weber specific issue that's a bigger issue about municipal taxation.
Okay, so the West Weber incorporation taxation issue, West Weber is going through an incorporation process. They created a feasibility study which you put together to show that the new city can stand on its own financially. The feasibility study that they did months ago did not contemplate using the municipal energy sales and use tax. There are property owners up in that area that would be included in the new city if incorporation is successful at the ballot this fall, who are concerned that after the city is created, they will actually levy this tax. So the property owners have approached the legislature to run a bill in the special session that says if you did not include the municipal energy sales and use tax in your feasibility study, you may not levy that tax for X number of years. The original proposal we saw was 20 years, meaning there would be 20 years until the city can contemplate levying that tax on anybody. Since talking to some of the parties involved, they're willing to step back on that a little bit. But this also plays into HB 359 because there are other cities up there that have offered to annex these property owners and levy the tax at a lower rate, but those annexations may look like an HB 359 annexation, creating an island or peninsula. Roger, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to say on this issue.
Well, this is a case of a city that doesn't exist and a tax that has never been imposed being the subject of legislation. So, I mean, it's nothing says that they're going to impose the tax. There are 100 cities plus in Utah that don't impose it. I guess the question becomes preserving the tax for everybody else and basically this new city potentially being barred from doing it. How important is that? The truth of the matter is the only bill we've seen was proposed language. There's a way around it for every other city in the future. You just have to include the MET in your initial feasibility study. But it's kind of one of those things, you know, it offends me that one city would come into existence under different terms than everybody else. On the other hand, I don't know, the political fight, I don't know if it's worth it, what it gets down to. I do want to emphasize how important the MET is, though, for all these cities who have imposed it. This is the only tax that every entity pays in your city. There's no exemptions for religious and charitable. There's no exemptions for government. So if you look at a city like Provo, you're looking at a city like in Salt Lake, where you've got a lot of exempt property, this is the only tax they pay. So I always worry about them starting to fool around with this tax. But anyway, as it is right now, I take it, Victoria, that they've agreed to sort of cut the runway down in half and eliminate the boat requirement for the future. So in 10 years, if this new city comes into existence, they could do it. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. And they also want to bring this back to the land use task force, which is looking at annexation incorporation and looking at a longer term solution. So Cam, correct me if I'm wrong. I think right now we're recommending to the board that we stay neutral on this issue with the understanding that the runway is less than 20 years. There's not a new requirement that you have to vote of the people, and that hopefully it will just be limited to these two incorporations happening this year. A land use task force will dive into this and find a better solution going forward for properties that have been long-term property owners and businesses in the area that get brought into an incorporation and have this tax concern.
Yeah, that's correct, Victoria.
Before I have to go, that's in our backyard. I've heard very little about it. I think the league is smart to stay neutral. We'll take Roger's advice on that. That's where I'm at with it as well. I think there's some things to get worked out, and we've got plenty of hills to die on in the next little while. I think this is the city doesn't even exist yet, so let's just be patient and let it work itself out.
Okay,
And
thank you, Mary.
after that,
Thank
I'm
you,
going to duck
Mayor.
off, and we'll see a lot of you at 3 o'clock, I believe, right?
Perfect.
Yes, thanks, Mary.
Great. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Mayor.
So the position, so right now we have a league position, which is to support the repeal of 359 first sub per the letter that was in your packet. That bill will include this West Weaver language. So we would nuance to legislators that were neutral on that piece, even though we support the underlying repeal. And then you have just this other issue that's happening in Tooele County that could also be part of the same bill. Victoria, you want to just give a quick overview of that issue too?
Sure. So SB 5004 was one of the special session bills in the spring. This is trying to deal with boundary protections when a new city is incorporating, because in the incorporation process, it's a rather lengthy process where you do a feasibility study and then you go to vote to people. But some people prefer to be annexed into a neighboring city rather than become part of the proposed new city. And I will just say that there's a lot of specialness going on about this issue. Lots of different property owners and the different corporations going on, in particular out in Tooele area. So SB 5004 basically said that a municipality can annex some of this property identified in a potential incorporation this year, as long as the annexation notice is filed by August 5th. Well, August 5th has come and gone, and the Lieutenant Governor's office received 27 petitions, last count, for annexation into Tooele City and into the other neighboring communities that would, like Grantsville, to deal with the potential incorporation out there. So these are property owners who don't want to be in the newly incorporated city. They want to be annexed into a different city. And the same with the West Weber area. The problem is it's created all kinds of confusion out there about what will the new city look like. They drew incorporation maps when they first proposed incorporating, and now some of that property is trying to be annexed out of the incorporation and annexed by their neighboring existing cities. Or there is some suspicion that some of the petitioners don't want to be annexed at all. They just don't want to be incorporated. So they filed these petitions of annexation to get out of the incorporation, but then they will drop their annexation effort too, so they can just remain an unincorporated county. It is unclear what, if anything, the legislature can do about this. It's possible they'll just try and ease some of the requirements on the Lieutenant Governor's office because they can't possibly draw these maps at this point. But it has created a lot of political issues for local officials out in those areas. Unfortunately, from some of the emails we've received, it's been very heated between residents, property owners, and corporation efforts, and that sort of thing. So if the legislature is going to tackle this, we haven't seen the bill yet. We've heard rumors about it. Whether it would be in the same bill as HB 359 and this net taxation issue, we're not sure, but it will make things even stickier if they put them all in one bundle. I don't think we have a position to recommend to you because we haven't really heard a solution or seen any language on this, but it's something you should be aware of that's happening in the annexation laws as the legislature continues to monkey with them.
Can I
So
ask a question
it would be
about?
nice. Oh, go ahead, Councilman Brown.
Victoria, I was just curious. You know, because I'm in Grantsville, and obviously this is an issue that affects us directly. Has this not come up before when people have incorporated? Like, it just like there should have been already something in place, but is this a one-off or what?
No, and I should have gone back and looked at the law before this because now I'm going to be hesitant to give anything. It's not a new issue. There were some different rules in place before they hit the special session, but this idea of boundary protection has been an ongoing issue of whose rights do you look to? Do you look at the people who started incorporation? Do you look at the people who don't want to be in that new city? Do you allow neighboring cities to poach off just because an incorporation has been triggered? And it's something the Land Use Task Force is also going to look at long term. We're just anticipating this, the legislature, because of what's happening out in the URTA area and West Weber too, to do something potentially now for the short term.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll do my own research too. Thanks for your answer.
Victoria, the one thing I'll add is that historically, we're generally neutral on incorporation bills. And we get involved in the annexation bills because that's your city authority. And with all of these moving pieces on annexation and incorporation that could affect other cities, that's why we've been down in the weeds on it. So really, what we need to confirm with you before Thursday's special session is that that this is still the position of the league, that we are neutral on the bills that are directly about incorporation, even if in the case of West Weber it could have impacts on future cities because of the feasibility study piece, and that we support the repeal of the 359 first sub, and support efforts to help Tooele and Grantsville as they're working through these annexation issues that 5004 created. So we know it's complicated, but we just wanted to make sure that we weren't inadvertently going in the wrong direction here because time is ticking. So, Mr. President, I think that would be, be the motion. Right, Victoria? Is there anything else on annexation and incorporation?
No, those are them.
Thanks, Cam. Thanks, Victoria. Is somebody willing to make the motion that Cameron described there of the positions on this legislation?
I'll make that
I'd
motion.
like to make a motion.
Let's have Mayor Bierman make the motion, and Jewel, Councilman Allen, how about second? We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you.
Aye.
Any opposed? Perfect. Thanks, Victoria. Thanks, Cam.
All right, thank you. And we'll pass that on to the LPC. Nick, if you'd go to the next slide, there's one more issue because the legislature can't get enough of legislating this year. I just read a headline. I live in Riverton, and they just discovered West Nile virus in the mosquitoes here. And I thought, of course they did. Like, that's what's happening this year. This is a referendum issue. So out in the URTA, Tooele County area, Tooele County adopted a rezone ordinance. And this has to do with the LDS Temple property and their surrounding residential plan developments around that property in that area. The residents filed a petition to refer the law, so they wanted to do a referendum on that rezone ordinance. The county determined that the petition was a local law, not a land use law. This is getting into the weeds, but it is an important distinction of why we're here. So state code says that a referendum on a local law is placed on the ballot the following year. So they would not be voting on it until next year. The petitioners, however, want it to be treated as a land use law and put on the ballot this November. They don't want to wait. So we have heard that Representative Nelson is looking at a way to get it on the ballot this year. And the proposal we last heard was to allow the referendum to appear on the ballot, which would be this November, if the entity impacted, in which case Tooele County Commission, and then the county clerk, who has to deal with the election, agreed to put it on the ballot. So this, I don't know if the law would be, again, made special to just be applicable this year, or if it would be a long-term solution. There are some legal issues with it, making it too narrow that it only applies in Tooele County this year. But the general proposal is to allow referendum on a land use law if the entity affected, whether it's the city or the county that made that land use decision, and the county clerk agreed to put it on the ballot for that November election. Cam, I don't know if there's anything else you want to say on that, since you've been the referendum guru for so long.
Some of you on the board will remember a couple of years ago when we spent a lot of time in board meetings talking about the future of referendum law. And really what this bill does is it creates a process for any referendum to make it on the ballot in November. So any local law that under current law after April 15th would have to wait till the following year could now make it. So on one hand, that's a good thing because it means that the process could be sped up. On the other hand, the language we've seen thus far is problematic because it invests the discretion in the election officer. And so if your election officer decides not to put it on the ballot in November, does that open the city or the county up to liability? But because of all the discussion this board's had around referendum policy, that's why we wanted to bring this to you, because we're expecting it on Thursday's call as well. So any thoughts or questions for Victoria or me on it?
Cameron, if I might say, I think that we ought to look favorably about coming up with a process where we could get the, on referendum particularly, where we could get the election done as quickly as the city and the county can agree as possible. Because as you know, under the law now, the ordinance does not take effect until after the election. And on a referendum, we're always in a situation where we've affirmatively passed something that theoretically we want to take effect. So this inability to get something on the ballot quicker on anything but a land use law has been an impediment, because you pass an ordinance that's not a land use law, and a year and a half later you get an election on it. Hasn't been satisfactory to some of the cities I've been involved with when they want to just get the thing decided and done.
This is Jewel in Grantsville, and I agree with Dave as far as that goes. Yeah, I think it's, having seen some of the back and forth on this issue in Tooele County, I think it will be good for everybody to resolve this issue sooner than later.
Annette, can I put you on the spot about any feedback from municipal clerks since you had your board meeting this morning?
Yes, we would like it on the ballot as soon as possible. And if the law is not leaving it up to the election officer, which every other year is the city recorder, it takes that liability away from us, because the law says it'll be on the ballot as soon as possible.
Victoria and Cam and maybe even Annette, can I ask a question? what's the thinking about having the election officer have to agree? Why wouldn't it just be the elected officials, the governing body?
This is Annette. The city recorders would prefer it to be the governing body.
Yeah, Gary, that's a great question, and this is one of the disconnects between cities and counties. The timeframes that we put in place with Representative Dawes' bill 2 years ago, the county clerks supported those because they felt it was realistic in order to get the referendum done. They want to be able to say no if it's for example, a county-wide local law in Salt Lake County that happens in July. They don't think they could get that done in time for November. So they've been the biggest sticking points around that April deadline. In fact, that they were willing to move off of that April deadline if they were given the discretion. The flip side to discretion, of course, is if you don't have criteria and statute telling you how to use your discretion, you could open yourself up to an equal protection claim, which is, and that's the point of just tell us how we do it so we can do it and avoid that liability. But it's really been the county clerks that have been pushing back on it. And this was new language that was brought to us on Friday. So like Victoria said, a lot of moving parts at the last minute here.
Well, as a middle ground, if it's a county election, can we leave it in the hands of the elected officials? I guess if it's a local referendum, it seems like it ought to be the elected officials. In other words, I think I'd prefer it would be easier if it was just the governing body of everyone. But if the county clerks are going to make a fight over it, potentially we could say that if the election official is an elected official, then they have to agree too. Otherwise, it's just the elected governing body. Is that too complicated?
No, I think that's a worthy way to try to thread the needle on this one. And policy-wise, the position that we need from this body, I'm hearing it, but a motion would be helpful, is that you're supportive of getting local laws on the ballot as soon as possible, and just working out the process to do that. And Gary, I think your approach would be something we could bring up to the county clerks this afternoon.
Well, I'd make that motion that we support getting any effort to get a referendum on the ballot as soon as possible.
I second that.
Thanks, Gary.
This is
Thanks,
Jewel.
Gary.
I second that.
Perfect. Motion by Gary and seconded by Jewel. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed to that motion?
Sorry,
Perfect.
can I just clarify that that includes even if it means the county clerk signs off, like there's this mechanism to accelerate, but it requires the county clerk signing off on it, whether they're elected or not.
Gary, was that in your motion?
I guess I would amend my motion to give leniency to staff to negotiate that. I think our policy ought to be that we support getting items on the ballot as much as possible. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Or do you need more direction? I mean, I guess I'd look to the rest of the board, but in my mind, I don't think it's a deal killer if an elected county clerk has to agree to a county issue.
Oh, I see. Okay. Got it. Okay.
I agree with that. I think that's a good way to say it.
I amend my second,
You're good with that
amendment.
second, Jewel? Okay.
Thanks, Jewel.
Yes, correct.
Okay, I'm assuming well, we better not assume. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Perfect.
Okay. Thank you. Nick, if you just go back to the first slide, this will be just a second. We just wanted to go over the tiers again. We've made some updates, and you can see the changes from the previous tiers in yellow. Again, this is how we are organizing our priorities as staff to focus on. Because we've had so many special sessions, Cam and I discussed this morning adding those issues to tier 1. And so they're the issues that we've just gone over: annexation, incorporation, and referendum. The last one is tobacco. There have been some cities who have been caught up in the legislature's legislation from general session that limited where tobacco retailers can be located. And the tobacco retailers, long story short, have brought a lawsuit that it creates takings issues and equal protection issues and that sort of thing. And those cities have been caught in between the legislature wanting them to enforce it and the retailers suing them. And so we are anticipating potentially some legislation on that during session. Again, we have not seen the details on that. And then tier 2, housing has kind of lit up lately. And so if we had it under land use, so we're highlighting it now. PIDS is part of that, and annexation and incorporation under that. And then in tier 3, added marijuana and tobacco. If anyone has any questions about that, please let us know. But we just wanted to get the board to okay this change to our tiers and what staff is focusing their efforts on.
Victoria, this is Mayor Niehaus. This is an actual real question. Do you think that plastic bags will be a 2021 issue? Like, aren't we able to take that off the chart? Or is that actually, are people still talking about this?
That is a good question. Wayne, I don't know if you want to weigh on this. He's had some talks with Logan, who is concerned about this issue, although that was before COVID. Made plastic bags the preferable choice at grocery stores. So, but that's a good question, I think, for us as staff and the rest of the board too.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, Mayor Niehaus, just quickly, it is a Cache County issue. Logan runs or owns the waste facility up there, and they as a city have banned plastic bags. But the legislator that represents Cache Valley has an issue with the landfill saying, you know, our city doesn't deal with plastic bags. And so if we have to deal with plastic bags as a landfill, you other cities will have to pay for that. And the Representative Snyder, who represents some of those communities, feels like this is Logan pushing its personal policy onto neighboring cities. And so it is a center, it is a high priority issue for him. And so we're leaving it on there because we think it will continue to be a conversation we have with Representative Snyder.
Perfect. Thank you. Any other questions on the bullet points under item number 9? Special session is already turning special, as we're finding out every day with bill files open.
Mr. President Mendenhall, just one thing to add on the amicus piece, and then Victoria, just quickly add on the gravel pit side too. On the amicus piece, the law firm that we contracted with, which is the law firm of a former Utah Supreme Court Justice, Michael Zimmerman, they provided us with a draft amicus brief around the Ripper Clause and the inland port last week. We submitted our feedback back to them last Friday, and they will likely be submitting that to the court a week from today, and we will be notifying legislative leadership hopefully right after the special session of the upcoming amicus brief. So that's the update there. Victoria, can you just give a quick update on gravel pits?
Yes, I certainly don't want to forget gravel pits. Last year, well, in December, 2 sessions ago, the legislature passed a bill that was supposed to be a bit of a peace treaty between land use concerns and gravel pit operators. It put a moratorium on place against cities and counties from putting new regulations on pit owners. The idea was the moratorium was to hold over for a year while the parties came to the table. there was not consensus in time for the session last year, and so the moratorium stays in place. We started talking to the PRC again about gravel pits. So there were several points that my understanding was that parties were close to agreeing to in December. The PRC brought back a draft to us that did not seem to really contemplate any of those points. And hearing from our pit crew people, they felt it was a step backwards. And so we're at a point where we may be on a stalemate on gravel pits. We are going to circle back with our pit crew, talk to probably maybe some outside counsel about some ideas, and figure out what the next step is, whether that is trying to continue to negotiate, recognizing that the gravel pit owners have some very strong supporters at the legislature over these type of private property rights, or if we need to just drop our own bill and then we go fight it out in session. But gravel pits, stay tuned.
Perfect. Cameron, anything else there?
Nope, it's a tier 2 issue now. It could turn into a tier 1 pretty quickly.
Okay. Okay, a couple things that we still need to get done for this meeting here. A couple things maybe can be postponed, but we're gonna get you out of here hopefully just by 5 after. So bear with us here. We need to get back to item number 7 and item number 8 to approve the finances of the league. Cameron, is Nick
Mr. President,
on here?
did we take a motion on the tiers to adopt the updated tiers?
We did not. Nope. That's in the handout of item number 9. Yep. So
let's just update that, and then we can move back to 7.
Mr. Chairman,
anybody have a motion?
I'd move to approve as presented on the tiers.
Mayor Niehaus, I'll second.
Thank you, Mayor Niehaus is a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed to the tiers as they're spelled out? Perfect. Thank you. Okay, let's move back up to item number 7 and item number 8. And if Nick is here, can we get through those, Nick?
Yes, we can, very quickly. I will share my screen now so you can take a look at them. The first item, item number 7, is our check register for the months of June and July. So this is the last month of fiscal year 2020 and the first month of fiscal year 2021. These are all the checks we cut in those 2 months with the memos to let you know what they're about. If you have any questions on the particulars there, I'm happy to answer them. If not, we can take a motion and move to the year-end report.
Any questions on the check register that Nick has sent out? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion.
To approve. I'll second it then.
Perfect. Motion and seconded for the check registers. I believe that was Mayor Pike and Mayor Talbot.
I think it was Dustin White, I believe, Councilmember White.
Gotcha. Okay. Councilmember White, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 And any opposed? Perfect. That's approved. Nick, can you take us to item 8?
Excellent. Yes. So this is our year-end report for fiscal year 2020. I know we talked a lot about our projections as we were talking about dues leading up in Q4. So most of the things we have that are major issues we have already sorted out. But this is our unaudited year-end report. There will be some changes, as I've noted in the conclusion, that you'll see happening in our audit in December. But overall, we collected 94.7% of our expected revenue this year. The major decline was in registrations and exhibitors, obviously canceling a conference. We knew that was coming. However, we did have a major influx that we knew was coming, and I think we mentioned in our last report from the state, from the Land Use Academy of Utah, of $60,000. We've budgeted to spend that. It's in our approved budget for next year, but that is part of the reason why we got up so close to that 94.7% of our expected revenue, because we had that influx of 60,000. Most of our expenditures were on point with the projections we were expecting. You'll see we're a little over in personnel because we have the GASB 68 rule, which includes our allocated or our accrued time off, which has been added in. We will also have to add in before our audit in September, the URS number for pension liability, depreciation, and then we are also recognizing some revenue from the benchmarking project, a defunct program we were running and managing the finances for a few years ago. So that will all come in and you will see those numbers in December. Overall, this is exactly what we were expecting to see going into Q4, and not many surprises. We're in good fiscal shape. You'll see by this report, we are putting, if I can get to the bottom here, a little over $200,000 towards our unrestricted cash balance. Obviously, that number will change as our auditing figures come in at the end there. But everything looks as expected, nothing surprising for that last quarter. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Perfect. Thank you, Nick. Any questions for Nick on the unaudited financial report for the fourth quarter?
I just have a comment, which is nice job managing expenses.
Thanks. Yeah, we were, with everything going on, we knew going into Q4, we had to pay a lot of attention what we were doing there. So we feel good about it. We feel that has put us in a place for a slimmer fiscal year 2021 that will just kind of be rolling as things have been for this last quarter. So we're confident going into the next year.
Very good. I'd echo that, Nick. Thank you for your good work in watching this. If there's no other questions, I would entertain a motion to approve the fiscal year 2020 year-end report.
So moved, Mayor Talbot.
Mayor Talbot made the motion. Is there any seconds?
I'll second that.
Who was that? I missed it. Sorry.
Tasha Lowry Draper.
Perfect. We have a motion and a second by Tasha Lowry. If you want to add in there the very well groomed mustache of Nick Jarvis as part of that financial report. It's been a long time since I've seen that, Nick.
I love
all in favor say all in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Perfect. Thank you, Nick. Hope that new baby is still doing well at the Jarvis home.
Indeed, doing great, and thank you very much.
Good. Okay, let's see. Getting to the next item on our agenda, we're losing some of our board members to other meetings. Item number 10.
Mr. President, yeah, we can probably finish everything in 5 minutes because we're going to postpone item 11 to the next agenda, and then item 12 is really just a quick approval of the current LPC roster, and item 13 is a reminder about the timelines for board vacancies and nominations. So item number 10, Nick, will you go to the nominations? Last year, the league created the Brent and Jenny Taylor Service Award, and here are the applicants for this year. We do still have a quorum, so we can do one of two things. We can either, President Mendenhall, have a conversation in this meeting about the applicants, or we as staff can put together a survey and send it out and let people submit electronically. The one unique angle this year compared to last year when we first did the award is that this year we do have a nomination for someone who is no longer in office and who passed away recently, which is the former mayor of Midvale, Joanne Sagini. You can see multiple people nominated her. All of the remaining nominations are people who are currently in office. So, President, we can either have a motion for one of the names here and some discussion, or we could do a survey and have board members vote electronically and finalize the Taylor Award that way for presentation at the annual convention.
I would entertain either if anybody has strong feelings on the board, but I do like the option, the second option there, Cam, of sending that out and having people send their picks back, if you will, and that way we'll have it finalized for the September meeting.
Can I ask a question on that? This is Jewel. If you're going to send out materials about these nominees, would it be possible to get the reason, some supporting documentation why people have nominated them? That would be helpful too.
So what we put in the packet is everything that the nominators provided. So in some cases, they didn't provide anything, just a name, and everyone who's in italics provided some background information, but that all we have is what they've provided.
Okay, thank you.
Could help it thin out just a little bit there if you don't have some concept behind those nominations, but maybe that's part of it.
Here.
Anybody have any strong feelings from Mayor Talbot?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Jeff Silvestrini, if I.
Oh, Mayor. Yeah.
Thank you. I looked at the nominations, and at least it appears to me. I mean, I haven't been in municipal government that long, but Mayor Seguini was a rock and a pillar in this for so long, serving both as a council member and as a mayor for a long time. Her contribution to the community of Midvale and this whole, all of us is remarkable. And I don't want to minimize the contributions that others have made, but in my review of those nominations, nothing even comes close to comparing to her contribution. So I'm prepared to move that we make the award to her.
I would second that.
Yeah, this is Councilmember Lowry. I would third that. I think that she was truly a leader.
Great. We have a motion, a second, and a third on the table that we can make that choice right now for the Taylor Award, which is going to be a great thing for the years and years of the league to come, to award that to former mayor, the late Mayor Joanne Seguini. The motion has been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any opposed to that motion? Perfect. There you go. Thank you, Mayor. Mayors, thank you. Okay, Cam, that takes us to
Yep, the last two items, and thanks to my staff for being flexible in light of today's meeting. Abby, can you take one moment and Nick, we pull up the link of the LPC roster. Just per our bylaws, we have to approve the LPC annually, and we have not yet done that in 2020.
And they're just about to have a meeting, so they better be approved before they have that meeting. Is that what we're getting at? All right.
Yeah, this would normally be something we do in the spring, and just too many things are going on in the spring. So as Nick is pulling up the link, Abby, is there anything else you want to add on this piece?
Nope. I think Carson put most of that together up on our website, but that is pretty much all I have. Very simple.
Perfect. So, President, we could just take a motion to approve the LPC membership, recognizing that the membership can change based on whatever information cities provide to us.
Perfect. Anybody want to make a motion to approve the LPC roster as presented?
Jeff Silvestrini, I'll move to approve the roster as presented.
Mayor Newhouse, I'll second.
Thank you, Mayor's motion and seconded to approve the roster. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Great. Thank you, Cam. Thank you, Abby. Okay, off to item 13, the Board of Directors vacancies and nominations. Nick, back to you.
Yes, and I'm just pulling up the vacancies so you can all see. We had this at the end of our meeting last time, and we have extended the deadline to August 24th. We did that a few weeks ago. It wasn't because we weren't getting nominations or anything. We just realized that the date was tied last year to last year's annual convention, and we're having our convention later this year, so we can give people a little more time. Those highlighted in blue on the current board, their term is expiring this year. We've had a number of folks reapply, but just so you're aware that if you would like to reapply, to go ahead and get that in. You can find it on our website or through the packet. This is the hard copy form, and then I missed it. Oh no, it's just one a little further. You can follow a link, or maybe we are missing the form with the link, but the link is on our board site if you need to get those in. If you also are not interested in reapplying or aren't up this year, we would ask you to think about serving on the nominations committee, and I will be working with Mayor Ramsey as we're finalizing what our annual convention is looking like, when we were going to have the nominations, and how that is all going to happen virtually. So that's where we're at there. Just wanted to give you an update and let you know that if you're going off, you still have a chance to sign back up.
If you haven't had enough fun yet, it's about to get funner. So sign back up. You got some time. Thank you, everybody who's participated and going to participate. Anything else on that, Cameron, before we adjourn?
Just that you will have an updated calendar invite in the next few days after we finalize all of the moving parts around the convention. So we'll have that September board meeting. That's where we'll do the year interview that we postponed from today and prepare for whatever the special session in September will bring us. So we're good, President.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, everybody, for being here. Thanks for every all your input. A very important meeting today, and there will be some important meetings coming up. Obviously, LPC here in about 50 minutes, and the special session, and getting through that, and all the other goals and events that we have in September, including another board meeting. So thank you all. With that, would anybody like to make a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn. This is Jewel.
Thank you, Jewel.
I'll second.
And Mayor Pike. Okay, down in St. George, he's a good second. He's a good man. Thank you, everyone. All in favor, say aye.
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 If you're all cold,
See you all soon.
if you're all cold, it's at 211 here today. Come on down.
Fry an egg on a
Thanks,
rock
everybody.
in St. George today.
I'll see you tomorrow morning. You can come bike with me.
Thanks, everybody.